So we're up to on in Moed Cotton on 12a on the bottom towards the bottom of the page. We're up to Tana Rabbana, the Brisa. And the Brisa says, Ein Medayirin. What is Medayirin? What is it, Medayirin? Medayirin is when you fertilize the fields by bringing the animals in there and they do their things on the field, and that fertilizes the field. Now, we know that working in a field in Chol HaMoed, unless there's special need, is prohibited. This is not really working in the field. You're just bringing in the animals in there and they're doing their things naturally. So there could be some discussion, but the Brisa says, Ein medayirin. You're not allowed to bring the animals into the field to fertilize the field. Rashi translates medayirin. So Rashi says, Machnisin behema lesodeh, that is to bring in the animal into the field, kidei sheyoitziu zevel, so they should produce the fertilizer, umizablin hasodeh, and you fertilize the fields. Can't do that. Now, this prohibition applies to all loy b'shabbosis, not on Shabbos. Can you see the place? The loy b'yomim tovim. Can you see the place? Yeah.
Yes.
I'll make it a little bigger. The loy b'yomim tovim. Huh?
It's good.
And the loy b'choilo shel moed, and not in the intermediate days of the Yom Tov. What happens? The imbo me'ei lehem. If the animals on their own, they entered into the field. Now, normally, if it's a clear prohibition, even if they come on their own, that would not be acceptable. But because this is not so clear, the animals are just there. Over here, it's not so clear that you're doing a work over here. So if they come on their own, it's permissible. We'll see. We don't have to stop them. And further, ve'ein misayin oison. However, you cannot help them. In other words, can't help them, meaning you want to push them along. They're concentrated in one area, but you want to fertilize the entire field. So you push them along, or you try. That you can't do. Ein misayin oison. If they come on their own is one thing, but you don't have to stop them, but you can support them. Rashi translates, Ein v'sayin oison, livehema, to the animals, lovei basodeh, to come to the field. So that means not within the field itself. I said before within the field, but this is even to help them, to direct them to come to the field. Can't do that. Only if they come alone. Or im nochrim heim, is there non-Jewish people taking care of the animals? Ein misayin lohem, you don't help the Goyish people, la'asiyem mimokim lemokim, to move them from place to place, kedei shetizabel kol hasodeh, so that the whole field should be fertilized. Afilu b'boim atzma, even if they come on their own, you don't help out. Either you don't help bring it to the field, or if there's goyim that bring them, you don't help them to bring around into the whole field. And further, vein masrim lahem shomer lenaeres tzoinam, and you cannot give them a guard to wake up the sheep. The sheep, the way it says over here, that you don't give to the goyim that lead them an additional goy to wake up the sheep, because the sheep come to the field, they rest, and they lay down over there. But you don't want them to stay in one place. So sometimes the way they do it, they put another guard to go ahead and wake them up to make sure that the sheep go from place to place. So you can't do that. Can't support it. You can't give them another guy, another lishmer, going im nochrim heim. So in other words, if they are being taken care by the goyim, so you can't add another goy there to wake them up to make sure that they keep on going around. Okay, so that's one thing. Further, says the Braisa, what happens, this is if you're hiring them or doing this for that particular Shabbos. But what happens if you have regular people that work in the field? It's their job to fertilize the fields. And they were hired for the entire week. They weren't hired for Shabbos. Hoyi sochir Shabbos. If it was hired for the week, Rashi says, what does sochir Shabbos mean? That he hired him for the entire week so that he fertilizes his field. It's not unique for Shabbos. Or Sochir Chodesh, or he hired him for a month. Again, it's the main point is that he wasn't hired specifically for Shabbos. He does the job a whole week or the whole month, or Sochir Shana, or for a whole year, or Sochir Shavua, or he was hired for the entire 7 years. Shavua, says Rashi, is a Shemitah. So this person is a hired person to do this field, to fertilize the field the entire time, not just for the Shabbos. So then he says, Misayin Oison. Then you could help them. It's as if it belonged to a guy, this field, because it's his responsibility for the Yontif, for the week and for the year. So it's as if it belongs to a guy. It doesn't belong to a Yid. Then it's okay to let them do it, and you can support them. You can move them around. You can have the guard over there. I think you do everything you need to do. It's not considered the Jews' field. And so, first of all, Messiah Naison, and the Ilu Shel Nachor. Then Rashi says, Hochigar Sinon, Ve'oise Nochri B'Shabbos V'Yom U'Mesayin B'Moed. I think that this was a gears in the Gemara. We don't have that. He says that the goy can do on Shabbos and Yontif, but you can help along on Chol Moed. In other words, you can't help them on Shabbos and Yontif, even though it's not your field. But on Chol Moed, you can help them. Why? The loy torach melocha, because that's not considered a trouble for work, which means kolomer to say, you can help that hired person to fertilize it. But I think according to this Gerson, makes it clear that a goy can do Shabbos and Yontif. But a Chol Moed, it's Messiah. You can help him to that hired worker to fertilize it.
But it seems like we went off the track of the question, because
Go ahead.
the question did seem to assume that it was the guy's field, the Jewish person's field, and that seems probably the normal way it would happen in Eretz Yisrael, that
No,
the
in the
field
first
belonged to
one,
the Jew.
yeah.
And so the answer was not related to what we thought the original question was. The question is, can the person do this? And you're assuming, can he do it in his own field? That seems to be more of a question than if it's not
I
his
think
field.
what originally we're talking about, it's a Jewish property, and the work is being done by goyim or by the animals themselves, but it's still a Jewish property. But then he gave you another scenario in which you have a hired person to fertilize it for a long period of time. So over there, we look at it as if it's not even your field. It's still the Yid's, it's still the Jewish ownership, but the fact that he was hired to do this job makes it as if it's his field. And that's why you're allowed to help him. Seems like it. So it's still talking about the Jewish field, but the difference is, if you're just hiring it, if it's just for that Shabbos, then you're not allowed to help him. But if it's for a longer period, then you can help him. It's not considered so much tircha, and it's not your field. I guess when it's your field, you can't help it because it looks like you're working on Chol Moed. But if it's not your field, it looks like the guy's field, and it's not too much trouble, then it's okay. You can help him. I'm not sure if this satisfies your question.
Nah, because what it's saying is, if it's your field, that's you can't do it. But if it's someone else's field, yeah, of course you're working. It's the opposite of the Kal V'chomer. Like if they did it the other way around, you could say, well, if you can't work on someone else on your own field, then you can't work on someone else's field. But it seems like there's not a.
But over here, it's part of the issue is here, it's doing in a public way work, Chol Moed in a Jewish field. That's part of the issue over here.
And that brings us back to last week's share, where you had someone working on the house, but if it's in the town, then you can't have.
Exactly.
It's almost contradiction to what we learned last week.
No, but I guess the over there it's just workers in you're building a house over there, but in our case, it's it looks like it's their responsibility. So people, it looks like it, and I guess it's also not really work. It's a little lenient because it's just fertilizing it, and the animals are doing it, and you're just supporting them. You're pushing them to a different area. It's not really work. Maybe that's why it's lenient. But he says further, umoisirim lahem shomer lenaeres soinom. And you could give them a youth to wake up the sheep. And Rashi says, and you give over to him, that means to the goyish, to the guy who's working there, he can use also another youth to wake up the sheep, shemedayin oiso, that you fertilize her, hoil ve'ena soker l'Shabbos mamish, since he's not hired out actually for Shabbos. And as we said before, that's considered like accepting the job. And it's considered as if it's the Goy's field, the non-Jew's field, and that's why the fertilizing it is okay. That's the opinion of the Tanakama. But the Rebbe brings a distinction. The Rebbe says there's differences. B'Shabbos, on Shabbos, you can only do it b'toiva. Shabbos b'toiva means if the guy wants to do it as a favor, he doesn't get paid for it, then we're not going to consider that as work. Because b'Shabbos is b'toiva. If he does it on Shabbos, if he does it as a favor, then we say that's fine. He can bring in the animals. As Rashi says, Rabbi Omer b'Shabbos b'toiva, im roitze shum odom l'sayeya. If any person wants to help, la'isa socher, to that person that is hired, b'toivosoi, just as a favor. So there's one person hired to fertilize the field, and another person wants to help him with the fertilizing. But as long as he just does it as a favor, oisa, then he's allowed to do it. Kuleimar, so what's really saying is he can do it bechinam, but v'loy b'schar. Can do it free, but not for pay. Kuleimar bechinam v'loy b'schar. If you just want to do it as a favor, then it's okay. But b'yom tov, but if you're going to help him on Yom Tov, then you can do it even if the guy will feed you for helping him. And if you're going to help him on Yom Tov, you can do it even for pay. So that means that on Yom Tov, we can do it also for food. And on Chol HaMoyed, you can do it even getting paid. So he allows you to do that. Again, it all has to do with the fact that it's not really a malacha. This would not apply to hire him to plow the field or to shovel the field. Then you wouldn't be allowed to do this. Apparently, also what you said before, to have him work in your property, and but this is lenient because we're talking about medayrin, that it's done, and that's why there's the list. Amar Rabbi Yosef, says Rabbi Yosef, Hilchus Rebbe, the law remains like Rebbe, that says that you can help them on Shabbos as a favor, in Yom Tov for food, and on Chol HaMoyed even for pay. Okay, a lot of these halachas are not so clear in Shulchan Aruch. They go and they articulate it more and give you exactly all the definitions. But we'll leave it for that. For now, we'll continue. Now the Mishnah gives another halacha. Previously, we learned about a person who got stuck in the middle with his olives, with his olive press. The workers disappeared upon him. He became a mourner. Something happened. He can't finish the job before Chol Moed. So what does he do? So before we learned about olives. Today we're going to learn about grapes. Says the Mishnah, the similar din, the same thing is true, like we learned before, with regards to the olives. Mi shahoyo yenoi, a person who has his wine inside of the pit. The pit is the area which is the squeezed grape go into the pit. They go into the dish, what they call it a pit, a boir, in which you collect the wine, the juice of the grapes. Rashi says, "B'soich haboir," in the pit, "shelifnei hagas," that is in front of the press. Oisa kli shahayayin neufel boy min hagas, that dish that the wine falls there from the press, korui boir, that's what we call the pit. And what happens? V'ir oy ovel oy oines. Now, he couldn't finish before Yontiv. He already pressed the wine. He had in mind to take the wine out and put it into the barrels and cover it up to finish the job. But in the meantime, it happened to him a mourning. A relative of his that he has to mourn dies, can't do the job. Or maybe some other mishap which he couldn't account for. Oy shehit uhu. Or he was tricked. He had workers that he made up with them to come to work. They never showed up. So now Yontif comes in and this thing is ruining on him. The wine, he got to do something with it. What is he supposed to do? Says the Mishnah, Zoylef v'goimer v'gov kidarke. So you can go ahead and empty that wine from the pit, and you finish by putting it into the barrel, and you can seal the barrel in the usual way. That's the way to preserve so that the wine doesn't get spoiled. So Rashi, Zoylef v'goimer kidarkoi. He goes in the usual way, Kolaimar, that is to say, Meirik oisoy bechovis. He empties it into the barrel, V'gof hachovis, and he covers the barrel, B'megufa, with the cover, Gomura, complete cover. The complete cover, it means you put a cover, you put a seal on it, you make it airtight so that the wine is going to preserve. Wine is going to stay. Divrei Rabbi Yossi, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. In other words, again, this was the opinion that once the thing is going to get lost, known as a dover ha'avud, if you're allowed to do it, you don't have to make it any changes. You can go ahead. Since there is a loss there, so you're allowed to do it. If there is a loss that you're allowed to do it, then you can just do it the normal way. You don't have to change anything. That's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says, Oisaloi lemudim. You put on boards on it. Not the regular cover, not the regular seal. You put boards on. Bishvil shelo yachmit, so it doesn't go bad. But you're not allowed to cover it in the regular way. What is Oisaloi limudim? Zokt Rashi, Eina yochel loguf kidarkoi. He's not able to cover it the usual way. Elo sheyitves, but he should grab hainu limudim. Those are limudim, bishvil shelo yachmitz. Tofes means to keep hold on it to hold on. That means limudim. Those are the boards, they translated it. Bishvil shelo yachmitz. Only good enough so that it doesn't get sour. Sheim einoi soismai. For if you don't seal it, machmitz, then it becomes vinegar, it spoils, the wine spoils them. So we're not going to just let you do it, even though, according to Rabbi Yossi, once it's a dovara avud, you can just go ahead and do it in the usual way. Rabbi Yehuda says no. You can close it, you can protect the loss, but don't do it in the usual way. Only enough that it does not become spoiled, and you can close it, but not in the usual way. This seems to be an exact replica of the previous Mishnah. The previous Mishnah said the same achloikis between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda with regards to oil. And in this Mishnah, we have the exact same achloikis between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda with regards to wine. And so the Gemara says utzricha, and it was necessary to repeat the same argument in both cases. Utzricha, and it's necessary, Dr. Rashi, lemeimor betarvayu, to say it by both of them, which is bishnei bobi the masnisin. In the two cases of the Mishnah, the mishcha of the oil, or the chamron of the wine. Because over there we also say, Rabbi Yossi Eimer Zoylef. He also says that you can go ahead and put it into the barrel in the usual race by Reisha de Maslesin. In the first case of that Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi said the same thing as over here. Why do we need to say it in both cases? Zog the Gemara, the Iash Me'inon Kamaisa. Because if he would have just taught us about the first case, the case of the oil, so you can say, maybe Rabbi Yossi only allowed over there in the case of the oil. Over there, Rabbi Yossi says, Zoylev Kedarkai, that he can go ahead and get the oil into the barrel in the usual way. And the reason why over there, Mishum de Mishcha Nofish Peseda, because oil, there's a big loss for oil. Oil is more expensive than wine. So for oil to go bad is worse than for wine, and therefore, and Rashi says the Mishcha Yakir. Mishcha is expensive. Ve'ika peseda yisera. So there's a big loss. So that's why Rabbi Yossi allows you to go ahead and finish it in the normal way. Aval chamro, the leinofish pesidei, but talking about wine, where there is no big loss because it's not as expensive. So maybe Rabbi Yosef will say, Eima Moeda le Rabbi Yehuda. So maybe he's going to agree to Rabbi Yehuda and say that no. What is he going to agree? The Ein is Zoyle v'goil gof mamish. He cannot pour into the barrel and actually cover it. But rather you do a temporary seal for it, for temporary, because there's not such a big loss. And the same thing is the reverse. The ashmi inon basraisa. And if he would tell us the case of the second Mishnah, the Mishnah of the wine. So Bahika Omar Rabbi Yehuda, over here Rabbi Yehuda doesn't allow you to fully seal it because there's not such a big loss. by wine. Abu Bahach, but perhaps if it was the case of the oil, maybe we would allow it. So that's why we have to bring down the machlokes in both cases, and that's why it's tzricha. That's why we need to tell you in both cases, whether it's a big loss or a small loss. Rabbi Yosef always holds you can do it in the usual way, and Rabbi Yehuda never allows you to do it in the usual way. He tells you to do it in a temporary way, and then you'll deal with it after Chol HaMoed. And that's why we needed both Mishnahs. Says the Gemara weiter. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abba. Says Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abba. Man tane shinui b'moyed b'dover ha'avud. Who is the one that says that you have to make a shinui on Chol HaMoed even though the item is lost? Who is that Tana? So he doesn't say, he could have said that Rabbi Yehuda, but he says it's the loik Rabbi Yossi. It's not like Rabbi Yossi. Because according to Rabbi Yossi, we don't need a shinui. The Omar, it's like Rabbi Yossi, it's unlike Rabbi Yossi. The Omar, because he says, Goimer Kedarko, you finish it in the usual way. He does not require a shinui.
I'm sorry, what is the case?
Go ahead.
What is the case? Davar Amud v'lo shinui? I didn't understand what the.
What does what mean?
What is the case? I didn't understand the case itself.
That he says, who is the one that needs, if you have an item that is lost, say like the oil, say like the wine before.
Oh, lost as in
Lost that there's going to be a loss over there.
Oh, okay. Right.
So who says that you would still need a shinui? So he says not like Rabbi Yossi, because we see clearly Rabbi Yossi does not require. We see Rabbi Yossi does not require a change, like Rabbi Yossi. The Omar, because Rabbi Yossi says, Goimer Kedarkoi, you conclude, go in the normal way. He does not require a change. Amar Rabbi Yosef, says Rabbi Yosef, Halacha ki Rabbi Yosef. Well, they have similar names, so it says Rabbi Yosef, the law is like Rabbi Yosef. And if it's a davar ha'avud, we don't need a change. Okay. So the Gemara brings down now, Bo minei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. They asked a question of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Mahu lemisha chaviso de shikro b'chulo de mayado. What is the halacha? Are you allowed to seal? Lemisha means to seal. Chaviso, the barrel of beer, shikra, on cholo de mayad. Lemisha Rashi loguf hachovis, to seal, cover the chavis. Amar lehu. So he said to them, Sinai Omar. Sinai, they called him, that was a name for Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef knew all of the Torah, all of the Gemara. They called him a Sinai, like the Torah was given as Sinai. So they refer to Rabbi Yosef as a Sinai. So he says, Sinai Omar. Sinai says, Rabbi Yosef said, Halacha ki Rabbi Yosef. Halacha is like Rabbi Yosef. That what? The Gof Kedarkoi, that you can go ahead and you can seal it in the usual manner, so you can seal it. The only thing is, over here we didn't have that this was done by, the Mishnah talked about a case in which, a mishap happened, they tricked him, but it doesn't say here that he couldn't seal it. But apparently, if he deliberately didn't do it before Yom Tov, then he would not be allowed to do it. But we're talking in a similar case, obviously, even though the Gemara doesn't mention that. But the Gemara asks Eimor the Omar Rabbi Yosi b'chamra. Where do we see Rabbi Yosi said that you can seal it normally? It's talking about wine. But b'shikra, Omar, did he then say by beer? Did he then say his halacha by beer as well? And the Gemara says, well, it's really the same reason. Chamra taimamai. What's the reason for wine that we allow it? Bishum de nofish peseda, because there's a big loss over there. Shikra nami isba peseda. Also, the beer has a big loss if you don't seal it. Damar Abaye, he quotes Abaye. Abaye said many things in the name of his mother. She was a wise woman. He says, Amra li aim, my mother said, Barshit Savi Vishaya, if you only have 6 barrels and covered, is better mi bartmanya, better than having 8 that has 8 soin. If you had 6 soin, Barshit Savi, 6 soin and covered and sealed is better than 8 soin veloisha not covered, which means uncovered is very bad. You'd rather have 6 covered than 8 uncovered. That's Rashi. Barshit Savi Vishayi mi bartmani veloishayi. Kloimer to say, Yofa Sheichor Mugov. It's better beer that is sealed, Shemachzik Shisha Soin, that holds 6 soin, Mechsheichor Shubichli Godel, than beer which is in a large vessel, Shemachzik Shmoina Soin, that holds 8 soin. So you see, so if you're allowed to seal wine, you should be allowed to seal beer because there's a big loss there too. Omar Rav Chama Bar Guria Omar Rav, says Rav Chama Bar Guria, son of in the name of Rav. Hilchas Moed, the laws of Chol Moed is ki Hilchas Kusim Bahalocha, is just like the laws of Kusim in Halacha. Kusim are people who converted, who weren't, I mean, there's 2 opinions whether they were kosher or not, but even if we consider them kosher converts, but we trust them on some things and some things we don't trust them. Some things they've been established that they are careful, and something not. What he's trying to say is, you can't learn, you can't say, oh, they're so careful in one halacha, but that doesn't mean they're careful in the other halacha. You have to know, you can only trust them what you know. Basically, each halacha is itself. What he's trying to say here is, you can't learn out one law of Chol HaMoed to another law. We have to deal with each case by itself. That's what Rabbi Chaim Bar Guria Rav says. Halachas Moed, the laws of Chol HaMoed, is ki hilchas kusim b'halacha, is just like the laws of the kusim in halacha. Hilchas kusim, Zakt Rashi, the Amrinon Chulin Davdal Medal. We say in Chulin Davdal Medal, Heicha da Achazik Achazik, Heicha da Lo Achazik Lo Achazik. Wherever they've been established, they're established. Where they're not established, they're not established. Which means you can't just judge them. What are we trying to give the halacha over here to say Chol HaMoed is like that? Omar Rab Daniel Bar Katina, says Rab Daniel Bar Katina, Loimer Shehein Akuris, to tell us that they're like barren. What does it mean, barren? Akuris, they're like barren. The laws of Chol HaMoed are barren laws. What does it mean, barren laws? Akuris, Rashi, Ki Isha Akora, it's like a barren woman. You don't have any fruit from a barren woman, just she herself. Saktrashi, which means akudos and the ein lemeidos zumezu, and you cannot learn one from the other, which means you can't say, oh, the halacha is like this, we can learn something else. No, just whatever you learn, that's what you learn. Sudrashi, the ein lemeidim zumezu. The emo, you can't say, let me say, kishem shazu muteres, just as this one is permitted, kach zu muteres. Likewise, this is also permissible. This is k'moy bekusim. We treat them, we don't say that, and it is like by dikusim. The loya merinon, and we don't say kehechi, the machzik bahai. Just like the kusi watches one halacha, he watches the other halacha. Can't learn out. Whatever we don't trust a kusi, one halacha, we trust him what he does, we don't trust him what he doesn't do. Which means everything is separate. It's barren, it's just that what you know. So when I tell you a halacha and chalamayit, it's only that halacha, can't compare it, and you can't learn anything from here. The Omar Shmuel, because Shmuel said, Zoiftin Kusta. He says you can seal a small jug, which is with the tar. Zufta is, you can use zephes, you can tar a small jug. But you cannot tar a large jug. And Rabbi Chaim, he said the opposite. Zoiftin chavito, that you can put the tar around the big barrel to make the cover. Vein zoiftin kusta, you can't. Why? So you can, each one says his own, because each one has his own reasoning. Mar chayis lipseda, the one who says that you could use the tar to seal it, he's mostly concerned about the loss. And a big one has a more loss than a small one. So he allows you to put this tar about the big one and not with the small one. The other one is more concerned about how much effort it is. It's less effort to tar a small one. It's a smaller jug. Let's do the Rashi. Mar chayish l'pseda. Mar, the Omar Zoiftim, the one who says that you can tar chavito, the big jug. Chayish l'pseda. He is worried about the loss. Ubechavito ikopseda yiseda. By a jug, a big jug, there is a lot of loss. Iloi zaftilo. If you're not going to put the zephes, the tar, to seal it, is mishum denofishena, because there's a lot of wine there. It's a big barrel, so therefore he allows you to tar the big barrel. But ubekusta lekopseda yiseda. But by a small jug, there is no lot of loss. And Rashi says, kuzo is a klikotin. That's a small jug, a small vessel. Umar chayish letircha. On the other hand, mar, the one that says that you can do the small one, he's mostly concerned not to trouble yourself too much on chalamayit. Mar Rashi, the Omar, zoiftin lekuza. He says that you can zoiv lekuza. So his concern is The chayish l'tircha yisera. He's worried about too much trouble. Ubekuza lekotircha yisera. By kuza, small one, there's no too much trouble. Ubechabitza ikotircha yisera. There is tircha yisera. So it all tells us that you can't just learn. Each one has its own reasoning, and you can't learn one from the other. You can't say, if the big one, yes, you can do the small one, or the small one, you can do the big one. You see the different opinion. Everything is its own thing. You can't learn from one another. Amar Abaye. So Abaye says, Naktinon Hilchas Moed ki Hilchas Shabbos. We hold that the laws of Chol HaMoed is like the laws of Shabbos. What does that mean? We're turning the page to 12b. The laws of Chol HaMoed are the laws of the Shabbos. Basically, in Shabbos, Yesh mehen potur avol osur. There are some that are exempt. In other words, there's no korban, there's no violation of the Torah, but it's osur. And the yeshmem, others are mutar lechatchila, you can do to begin with. But there is no prohibition, there's no chiyuv. The laws of Chol HaMoed are similar to Shabbos, which either it's exempt but it's prohibited, or it's permissible. But there is no chiyuv because Chol HaMoed does not get a violation of the Torah. It is not going to get you a korban. It's always going to be potter. It's either potter but osur, or it's mutlach. Let's do the Rashi. Yesh mehem potter avol osur. There are some that is potter, but it's osur. V'hodu kotoni ein zoifin sin. When we say, for example, that you cannot tar, osur lemeved lechatchila. This is something we're trying to tell you. It's osur to do so in the beginning. Avo b'di'eved lo yahavi, but if you did it, you would not be liable. V'hodu kotoni zoifin, when it says you are allowed to, having mutar lechatchila, that's permissible lechatchila. Yesh mehem mutar lechatchila. There's some of them that it's permissible to begin with. Okay. The Gemara relates that Rav Huna chotzdu le chatzdo b'mayado. They cut his cut on Chol HaMoed. They cut the field, the chatzdo on Moyado. Rashi says lemichtzad means lichtzer, to cut. Now, but Rav Huna said Rashi, yesh lo ma yochel have. He had what to eat. He didn't have to go and cut because he didn't have any food to eat. Yesh lo ma yochel have. Frag the Gemara, v'amai shori lo, why is this permissible? So Eis ve'Rabba bar Rav Huna l'Rav Huna. So Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, asked Rav Huna. The son asked his father. He challenged his father. We learned in the Braisen, Toichanin kemach b'moyed l'tzorech hamoyed, that you can grind flour on the Chol HaMoed for the Yom Tov. But if it's not for Yom Tov, it's awesome. I'm just thinking for a second, would it be osur to toichen kemach on Yom Tov itself for Yom Tov? I think tchina is probably osur because it's a big job. You have to do it from before Yom Tov. Because he says toichen kemach b'moyed, it's talking about Chol HaMoed for the purpose of Yom Tov, but not for Yom Tov. It's osur. You can only do it for Yom Tov. What is davar sha'avud b'moyed? That's for the need. Something which would be lost in Chol Moed, if you don't do it, mutar la'soisei b'moed. Then you can do it b'moed. Dover she'eino avud b'moed. But if it's not lost in Moed, then it's asur. Then you're not allowed to. B'medvarim amurim betlushim in akarka. When do we allow it if it's detached from the ground? Avo mechuber lekarka afilo kule avud. But if we're talking about something which is connected to the ground, it's all asur. It's more asur to go ahead and do it in a public way, things that are connected to the ground. We'll see. Well, this doesn't fit with what we learned in the Mishnah before. We allowed you to plow your field, we allowed you to do a lot of work that's connected to the ground. But in this opinion, holds this brisa that we brought down, holds that you're not allowed to even do a davar ha'avud, and even not for what you need to eat, if it's detached to the ground. That is too much a desecration of the Chol HaMoed because it's connected to the ground. Sorry, but this only applies to things is lost. But I said, and if he doesn't have what to eat, okay, we're talking about you're destitute, you don't have food. So then you can do everything. Koitzer, you can cut, Amer, you can bundle, Vidosh, you can thresh, Vizoyer, you can throw, winnow, butter, you can sort out, Vitoichen, you can grind. Ubilvad, Shelo Yodush Beporis, don't thresh with cows, that would be too much. But you see that if it's connected to the ground, you're not even allowed to. So how is it that you let them cut your grass? Now, the Rashi said before that he had what to eat. Rabuna yesh lo ma'yochel, because if he didn't have what to eat, then it's not a question. Because it just says they cut it. They didn't use the cows. He allowed to do that. He allowed it to cut. But he had what to eat. So how come he says you did it? Amalei. So he answered him, Yichidoihi. That's an opinion of a single person. And I don't hold like him. This prohibition against doing Chol HaMoed work because it's connected to the ground is an individual, one opinion. I don't hold like him. Omar Lei, he says, Hai dikotoni mechubar. This is that it says that if it's connected, afilu kuli ovud nami osur, even if it's entirely lost, it's osur. Rabbi Yossi, that goes like Rabbi Yossi, as he's going to say in a minute. Prove it. V'chidohi, and it's a singular opinion. V'loi sviralon kamosei, and we don't go by him. Kivon dechol yoimo. Lav beporis daishi. As the Gemara is going to say, and this goes over to the next Gemara, so I ran out of time. I'm going to run to Mincha Marav now. So let's leave it over here. And the Mitzvah Shem, we covered a little ground today. Mitzvah Shem will finish up tomorrow, next week. Same time,
Beautiful.
same station. The Mitzvah Shem at 7 o'clock next week. Everybody have a great day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Cool.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for joining.
Have a great week.
You too. Thank you.